Joseph Smith said, "There's a law, irrevocably decreed in heaven before the foundations of this world, upon which all blessings are predicated. And when we obtain any blessing from God, it's by obedience to that law upon which it's predicated." In other words, nothing is arbitrary. Nothing in the structure of reality is random. It is all the result of natural law. And because all of creation is governed by the same law, all of creation follows the same pattern. And I'll get into this a little bit more in just a second. But one thing that you'll note when you're studying this Hebrew worldview is that it's typological, not logical. In other words, it sees things in patterns. So, for instance, we have some of this in the scriptures. Alma, in Alma 30, notes, "All things denote there's a God, the earth and all things that are upon the face of it, its motion, and also all of the planets which move in their regular form do witness that there's a supreme creator." Now, this might not mean what you think it means. Alma's not just saying, because there are things, because there are planets which are moving, there's a God. The key words here are motion and planets that move in their regular form. He's talking about patterns. What Alma is essentially saying is that there's a rhythm to creation. There's a pattern, and this pattern is observable on so many different levels. So it's just one example of this. Think about the cycle of death and rebirth. Okay, so we'll start with the earth. The earth has 4 seasons. It gets really hot, in about the middle of the year, and then it hits a peak, and heat and light start to decline, and we descend into fall. Everything starts to die, and it gets colder and darker, and then somewhere around the darkest and coldest point of the year, there's a transition. We start a new year. Light begins to come back into the world in greater degrees. There's more warmth, and life starts to spring up again. Okay, so it's a cycle. The phases of the moon show a similar pattern, right? Well, we've got a full moon, and then light decreases until it gets to the darkest point, and then it's called what? A new moon, right? It's a new beginning, and from that point on, light starts to increase. It's a death and a rebirth. The end and beginning of every single day follow the same pattern. Or we wake up in the morning and light starts to increase, and then we hit a peak somewhere in the middle of the day and light starts to decrease. Things get colder and darker. We even go to sleep, which is a type of death. And we wake up again the next morning, which is a type of rebirth. We get a similar type in nature with the caterpillar and the butterfly, right? It goes into this dark cocoon only to emerge something new, rebirth. We can even experience this pattern in our own lives at times when we go through really hard experiences that fundamentally change us. So we come out an entirely different person on the other side of it. A little bit like Ebenezer Scrooge, but in real life. So maybe you've gone through something like that. Maybe you know somebody who's gone through something like that. And then, of course, Christ is the epitome of this. He's the most literal fulfillment to the highest degree. In real time, he died, was buried, and rose again in new life. So you can kind of start to sense the rhythm in the universe, right? There's this wave or this pattern that everything follows. And when we understand this pattern, we start to understand the order of creation. D&C 52:14, there's an eternal pattern in all things. And again, I will give unto you a pattern in all things, that ye may not be deceived. For Satan is abroad in the land, and he goeth forth deceiving the nations. So how do we discover truth? By observing patterns. And they're everywhere.